We're going to be talking about margin and leverage. So let's go straight to the lesson. All right, so margin and leverage. All right, so margin is the minimum amount of dollars, right, of money you must put into play to control a larger amount of the currency pair. Right, it's dependent on the allowable leverage, which varies from brokers to brokers. Right, so I'll talk about leverage in 1 or 2 slides time. And then every time you enter a trade, a portion of your account equity is set aside and allocated as margin deposit. Right, so let's say you have $10,000 in your trading account. When you place a trade, right, let's say one standard lot, a portion of your account equity, right, most of the time is $1,000, right, $1,000 of out of that $1,000 out of your $10,000 account balance will be set aside as margin deposit. So you cannot touch this $1,000, right? You can't withdraw this money. You can't withdraw this $1,000 until your trade has closed, right? Or you exited this trade. Then that $1,000 margin deposit will be released back to your account balance again. All right. And finally, the bigger the lot size, the more the margin is required, right? So for example, in most cases, one standard lot requires about $1,000 margin. If you're trading 5 standard lots, then you times 5, right? $5,000 margin. Okay, next one is leverage, right? Leverage allows an individual to control larger trade size, right? So for example, as a trader, right, I trade Forex on leverage, right? So this means that $1, right, $1 of my deposit can control a larger amount, right? So depending on the leverage, so if my leverage is 100:1, $1 can control $100, and if I have $1,000, I can trade $100,000, right? So that is basically what leverage is all about. So it's used by traders as a tool to magnify their returns, right? So a lot of traders use leverage because they want to make bigger money, right? With a small capital, they want to make a larger amount of profits quickly, right? But don't forget, you can also lose, right? Your losses are magnified as a result, right? So you can lose big as a result of leverage. Okay, so for example, if the allowed leverage is 100:1, this means that it's a 1% margin, right? 1% margin, and you wanted to trade a position worth $100,000, so that's one standard lot. You would be required to deposit in a down payment or margin of 1%, which is equivalent to $1,000, right? So if your broker or your trading account, your leverage is 100:1, right, this means that for every one standard lot, you need at least $1,000 in your trading account to be paid as a deposit, right? Margin deposit. Sorry, not paid, to be set aside as a margin deposit, right? So if you only have $900, then you can't trade one standard lot, right? The most you can trade is 9 mini lots or 0.9 standard lots. If you have $5,000 and you want to trade one standard lot, can you do that? Yes, you can, right? Because it's $1,000 to be set aside as a margin deposit. You still have another $4,000 in your account balance. All right. So in trading terms, right, leverage equals 100 over margin percent. The ability to control large amount of currency. Right, so it ranges from 10:1 to 800:1. Right, so this means that for every $1, you can trade up to $800. Right, so for every $1,000, you could trade up to $800,000. That's crazy, right? The leverage is just too high. Right, so typically, right, normally in most for most traders, right, they normally trade with a leverage of 50:1 to 200:1. All right, 50:1 to 200:1, right? For me personally, I still use 100:1, right? I've been using 100:1 for the past 12 years. So, to me, leverage is not so important, right? Because we are keeping our risks small. So, but we'll cover that in a future lesson. All right, and don't forget, leverage is a double-edged sword, right? What does that mean? Yes, you can win big, but you can also lose big. All right, so be very careful when you're trading with leverage. Right, a lot of people trade on leverage, right, and then they trade very aggressively. This means that their lot size is too big. All right, so you don't want to be trading too big a lot size, otherwise your capital might not be sufficient. All right, so that concludes today's lesson on margin and leverage.